agents, what's going on? Collin here, and today we are going to be talking about the ultimate creative financing solution, sub-twos. And I'm very hesitant to do this, and actually I sprung this on Chris last night, like at 8 o'clock at night. I was like, man, I really want somebody else on this because subject twos are a very odd thing. And if you have ever been like almost everybody that's like, hey, I really want to be a real estate investor, but I don't have any money. But I heard on a podcast that there's creative financing solutions where I can get in with no money out of pocket. Yes, that's true. And just for a general principle, ladies and gentlemen, buying a house with no money down tends to be a very risky proposition, no matter how you slice it. Even if you're buying like a house as a VA loan and it's 0% down, to me, that's a little bit risky because if you ever go to sell, you have no equity in your house and you can't really make up these things. So 0% down deals are a little bit sketchy, a little bit weird. You definitely need to be careful. You've got to protect yourself because they're just weird. I mean, there's just no other way to do it. They're just kind of weird. But we are going to talk about these because I do think it's important. And the number one thing that most people do when they do these creative financing solutions is, one, they usually do owner finance. That's what they call creative, which I don't think it's that creative. But sub two is the second most creative financing deal that people do. Now, before I go any further, I need everybody to very, very, very plainly understand I am not a lawyer, okay? This is not legal advice. Guys, just because I'm saying it does not make it gospel. Just because I'm going to have Chris talk in a minute, just because Chris says it does not make it gospel. Okay. So first and foremost, that is the number one thing. Because when you start playing with sub twos, you're playing with fire and you can do it, but just be careful with that. Okay. And the reason why I'm bringing up sub twos today is because I'm actually working on one right now. I'm working on this sub two and I'll explain it once I explain what a sub two is. So, by a quick show of hands, just everybody on the computer, how many of y'all have ever heard the term sub two? Wonderful. Just about everybody raise your hand real quick. Who has done a sub two? Hillary, Chris, Israel, got it. Okay. So I'm going to back up just a little bit from the very beginning. Sub two is short for subject to the existing financing. So what we do in a sub two transaction is we have the homeowner deed the house to us. So we are now the property owners. However, we do that with the property owner keeping the existing financing. So they keep the loan, but I get the house. Collin, that doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody do that? Well, whenever you take the house, you tend to, quote unquote, take over the loan. What I want to point out is very, very carefully or very succinctly is this: when you do a sub two, it is not a loan assumption. It is not a loan assumption. Some loans, if somebody's got the loan, you can call the bank, you can fill out all the paperwork, and they will just take your name off or the seller's name off and put your name on the mortgage. That is a loan assumption. We are not doing that here. We are leaving the loan in the original seller's name, and we are taking possession of the house. When you do that, you tend to say, hey, look, I'm going to be making the payments for you. Now, with that being said, I'm pretty sure you all see the first problem with this deal is if I leave a mortgage, let's say in Chris's name. Chris is selling me a house, but he's going to deed it over to me, but I'm leaving the mortgage in Chris's name. Chris had better trust me pretty dang good because if I don't make mortgage payments, Chris gets foreclosed on. Okay? So typically, whenever you do a subject to deal, there's going to be some sort of consideration like, hey, I'm going to give you $5,000 or something along those lines to help those people out in case you do decide to stop paying or whatever it might be. Okay, so that's the first thing. You got to make sure that you understand that you are now making the payments. And if you do walk away, which to me is extremely unethical, they will get punished. Okay. The second problem with the sub two, where you can get into trouble, is almost every, I'm assuming everyone I've ever seen, every time you have a promissory note. So when I go buy a house, there's two main things I sign. I sign a deed and a promissory note. This is now my house and I promise to pay somebody back. That's what they call it, a promissory note. In that promissory note, somewhere around page 600, there's usually some, if you've ever, I just closed a house with a buyer. I mean, it's a stack of papers like this. But somewhere around page 600, there is what they call, it's named two things. It's either called an acceleration clause or a due on sell clause. And what that says is that if you transfer this house, if due on sell, we accelerate this loan and now the full amount is due. The reason why banks do that is they qualified Chris in this example, not me. They don't know me from Adam. I could be some bum living on the street with absolutely zero money, and they don't know that I'm going to pay for it. And banks do not want to foreclose on you. They will do it, but it's not their habit. They don't like doing that. So they'll do everything they can, including making sure somebody who hasn't qualified doesn't get the loan. Now, there's the two problems. One, if you don't make the payments, you can screw the other guy. Number two, if the bank ever finds out about this, then you're going to have to pay the entirety of that loan because they will accelerate it due today. All right. So those are the two big pitfalls when it comes to a subject to. So why can you do subject tos? Well, technically, they're not illegal yet. There's a lot of legislation talk going around, people trying to get rid of this stuff. I don't know how long it's going to be good. But technically, it's legal because you have the right to sell your property to whomever you want. You're not breaking the law, but you are violating your contract with the bank. That's what the person selling the house is doing. They are violating the law, not the law, but the contract, because the contract says if you sell it, you need to let us know so we can get paid off. That's the basic structure of a subject to. All right. Will the bank ever find out? That's the big question. Honestly, Chris, you can argue with me on this one if you think. 99 times out of 100, they don't. They don't find out. If you keep making the mortgage payments, they tend not to care or look. But if you do this correctly, then you will be filing a deed with the courthouse. So it is public record that they've sold the house. Now, the bank would have to go on to the information website for Bexar County or whatever county you're in, look up the deed, figure all that stuff out to find out if you did sell it. Now, do they have the staff to do that? Probably not. Will they ever find out? Probably not. But they can. So what I'm going to talk about today, so that's kind of the general structure of a subject to, but I'm going to talk about how I do subject tos. And Chris has done a lot more than I have. I'm sure Hillary's done more than I have. I want as much input as possible. And then we're all going to tell our scary stories about sub twos because I got a great one. But to do a sub two, so here's the situation that I'm working on right now. And it's a little bit fraught, but I've got the cash to be able to handle this. And so we're going to see how this goes. Right now, I've got a guy who is 3 months behind on his hard money. He has completely finished the property. It is done. I have walked it. I have inspected it. It is done. He has got an appraisal in his hand for $240,000. But he does not have time to sell this property because they are going to foreclose on him because he is 3 months behind. He's going through a divorce and he has no cash. His interest-only payments were $1,500 a month. He owes 3 of those. Simple math is $4,500 is what he's behind. His loan balloons on July the 1st. Most people don't look. So when you get a hard money loan, they tend to last for about a year. Okay. They tend to last for about a year and maybe 6 months. This one I think was 6 months because it was Longhorn, but you can get extensions. So he got one extension, which lasts till July 1st, but then he never made any payments. I can get one more extension of this. And so I can actually push this thing out till October if I need to. They tend to charge for that. So I've got this guy who's $4,500 behind. He owes roughly $170,000 on the house, and he has an appraisal in hand from about a month ago for $240,000. So guys, right there, I have found a property that has $70,000 in equity in it. That's huge, okay? According to all the paperwork. Now, paperwork never works out, especially in this market. So he calls me and he's like, dude, I'm up shit creek. Will you buy this house for me for $180,000 or $185,000, I think is what he originally wanted. $185,000 to $240,000. Guys, I'm not going to get into it all, but I ran the numbers as a rental. I ran the numbers, all this kind of stuff. It didn't really make sense for me to write a check for $185,000 to turn around and sell it for maybe $240,000 because now I'm only making $55,000. And at $55,000 plus commissions, plus this, I'd probably be walking around with close to $30,000, $35,000 for a $185,000 cash investment. That's a bad return on investment. They're like, you're just not going to want to do that. So I talked to him for a second. I said, how about this, man? How about if I get you at a hawk? I pay that $4,500, but you deed the house over to me, and I'm going to turn around and put it in the MLS and sell it as a traditional flip. And if I got to pay for the extension, I'll do that. If I got to do, I'll figure out the rest of it. So that's what he was like. Yes, I'm going to try and do that. He's got one guy that's offering him 160. So he's trying to short sell it, which I've never known a hard money guy to short sell. That's a whole nother story. But I've got this guy on the phone. All right. So here's what I do. My first step, ladies and gentlemen, my first step in a subject 2 is once we've agreed to this concept, my next phone call is to my lawyer. Okay. My next phone call is to my lawyer. Okay. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, laws change all the time, guys. As of September 1 last year, there was a bunch of real estate law changes. There's some other that happened this past May. I want to make sure that I'm up to date on everything, and I know that they are, at least they should be. Okay. The second reason is I want that lawyer to give me what we call an opinion of title. This is not as good as title insurance, but the lawyer will go back and make sure that the only lien on that property is the hard money loan lien that I'm thinking about. He could have had an air conditioning lien, a hot water lien. He could have vendor liens. He could have all kinds of stuff. And if he has that, then my numbers get thrown way off. So I want to make sure that I'm up to date with current laws, and I want to make sure that I'm up to date with an opinion of title from this lawyer. Now, once we get those 2 things back from my lawyer, I'm going to ask my lawyer to prepare 2 documents. That's what I'm thinking. Sorry, guys. I had notes on this, but I left them somewhere. I don't know what I did with it. 2 main documents. First one's the deed. I need it deeded over to me. I need to take possession of this house. Okay. So that's pretty easy. That tends to be canned form. They've got it over there. The second thing that I want is I want a limited power of attorney. And I need him to sign this. Why is it limited? Well, a power of attorney, guys, allows me to act on behalf of somebody else. If you've ever had a power of attorney, most of the time it happens for the elderly or the infirmed or somebody like that, where I can now make decisions on their behalf. A limited power of attorney limits me to what I can make decisions. So I don't want to be able to get a full power of attorney where I can go pick his daughter up from school, right? That'd be weird. But I do want it limited to all things dealing with this house. So I can't open a bank account for him. I can't clean out his bank account. With a power of attorney, I can clean out his bank account, but I need a limited power of attorney. So I can make phone calls about this house and people have to talk to me because I now have permission from him. I'm not going to flaunt that around, but you might need that at a later date. So those are the 2 things that I need coming right out the gate, is a power of attorney and a deed. Once I do that, guys, I'm able to take care of the rest of this. During this process, though, you are going to want to vet this person selling you the house. You need to make sure you know exactly who you're talking to. Ladies and gentlemen, that means I want your social security number. I want your address. I want a copy of your driver's license. I need to know everything there is to know about you. Now, why is that important? Guys, when I go to sell this, if this guy owes back taxes, I can't sell this house until we get that taken care of. It's going to show up somewhere. I want to make sure I know everything that's going on with this particular guy. So I've got all of his information. I've got a power of attorney, and now he's deeded the house over to me. Once all that happens, the next thing that I do is, now that I have a power of attorney, I'm going to go into his banking login if I can figure that out. That's the next thing I like to do. So his whatever mortgage login, I want his password. I want his account number because I have access to all that. So I can get in there and make sure that I can get payoff statements when I need it. I can make payments if I need to, whatever it is. I need to become this guy for specifically this house. Okay. Because if I can't get in there and I can't make sure that he's caught up and I can't do all this stuff, little things will bite you in the butt. So this game is a lot of CYA. All right. Once I've done all that, and once I've done that, then I will send the money, the $4,500, to catch him up. I'm not going to do any of that because now I'm just floating $4,500 out there, and it's like he could owe $1 million on child support, and this whole thing could go sideways. So that's the things that I need to make sure that I do. Now, this is a pretty clean sub two because I'm going to list this house and sell it. The average days on market in that neighborhood, I think we're 25. It's going to take me another 30 days to close it. I should be out of this deal in 2 months. Once it's done in 2 months, his credit's not restored, but it comes off of his credit because I left the mortgage in his name. And now I take the profit. That's what we're going to be doing. If you are going to sub to something similar to Chris, like I'm going to sub to it and I'm going to put a renter in there. The renter's going to pay me and I'm going to make the payment. And this arrangement can go on for 30 years if he has a 30-year mortgage. If you're thinking of something like that, you need to make damn sure you have the seller's new address, his phone number, any way that you possibly can to get a hold of him, because now you've almost married this guy. The most prevalent sub-2 projects tend to be VA loans. I know Chris does a lot of them, and I'm going to have him speak to it in just a second. The reason why sub-2 loans make sense for a VA is because they're 0% down. If I'm a veteran, or let's say I'm active duty and I buy a house on a VA loan, and 6 months later, they tell me I have to be relocated to China because of the Chinese war, and I need to sell my house. Well, if I put 0% down, in 6 months, I have zero equity in that house. There's not going to be any. And I can't sell it, because if I do, I owe 2 people commissions. I owe all the closing costs. I owe all this, and I just don't have an extra 20 grand laying around that I can just throw at this problem. So those people tend to be very open to it, and at least they'll listen. So there's a lot of problems with the VA loan, which we're going to get. I'm actually going to let Chris explain the allocations and all that stuff with VA loans. So with all that being said, Chris, I want you to chime in, and I want you to tell me what I am not doing that I should be doing. Or Hillary, guys that have done sub-2s before, is there a step that I forgot?
So Collin, actually, I do want to make it known, like what you're doing as a hard money takeover is something new I've never done. Me and Collin were actually talking this morning about it. So usually mine are VA, we're a military city. I see a lot of veterans, exactly what you said. With that situation, 0 down means they don't have equity for a while, unless the market has a huge increase in 12 months, then they build some equity, but maybe just enough to pay the realtor commissions. But that is typical. This morning we were actually talking, and the other thing we want to make it known is it's not just the mortgage we're taking over. We're also taking over anything else attached to the home. I'm currently working on one right now. A year this family has been in, and they actually have $37,000 worth of solar panels that they just installed. So that's the other loan that I need to consider. It's not even consider. I need to take over responsibility. So usually it's the mortgage, water softeners, or solar panels. Any of those things that are attached to the home that are still making payments on, you've got to get logins and all that. One of the other things that a lot of people also overlook is if they're behind on mortgages, they're probably behind on HOA. What does that mean? You're probably gonna have to spend a couple of extra $1,000 to get that reinstated as well, caught up, and find the logins. Because once you have the logins, then that quarterly, monthly, yearly responsibility falls onto you. But sorry, I was taking notes as you were going through, Collin. So yeah, the limited power of attorney, if I can go through my notes, limited power of attorney is a must. Anytime I take over a loan, VA, FHA, you can also, once you log in, you can have the family do a third-party authorization. And that's provided by the lender, Freedom Mortgage, Mr. Cooper. You can just download it, have them fill it out. And I usually tend to put myself as a financial advisor for any of these people. So if I ever have to call the bank on their behalf, I have the third party. And then I also have this, the third party authorization and the limited power of attorney, which basically the same responsibility. But you do want to take in consideration that the loans get sold after a few years. It might no longer be Mr. Cooper. It might be Freedom Mortgage in next month. So those two pieces of paper, when they buy the loan, they're also buying that third-party authorization, because anything that was attached to the loan from one bank to the next transfers out. So you do want to make sure.
So Chris,
go ahead.
Let me interrupt you real quick. I did not like one thing you said. I loved the rest of it.
Okay.
The one thing he said is he's like, hey, I'm going to act like a financial advisor. Guys, don't do that. You're misrepresenting yourself. That is a licensed position. Okay. You have to have licenses to do that. You don't want to misrepresent yourself to a bank, especially on a recorded line, about a license that you do not have. Okay. You can simply say, hey, I'm going to be a caretaker. They're moving out of town. I'm going to be watching over the house for them. You can say they're they're getting ill, whatever. You can say however you want to do. Like if they are leaving town, use that line. If they are in financial trouble, you can just say, hey, I'm going to be partnering with them. That's what I said to Longhorn when I talked to them about this one. I said, hey, I'm going to be partnering with him to help him sell this house. I know he's behind and he needs some money. We're going to take care of it that way. Okay. They don't know that I'm doing a sub two, but I technically am partnering with him. Okay. So you got to be careful about what you say. Don't misrepresent yourself and don't lie. That can be problematic. Okay. And do not tell the bank what you're like, I'm going to deed it over to myself, because you just admitted that there's going to be a transaction in that process. So careful how you say things.
And I appreciate that, Collin. No, you're right. But it is just more than the loan. You know, we buy pieces of paper. Sub two is you're buying a loan. That loan is attached to a house. And so really at the end of the day, yes, we want to see the house. We want to check the condition. We want to see what the yard work is, anything attached to the house, but we really want to see the piece of paper. And I say that because nowadays, as realtors, we're actually seeing a lot of loans at 6, 7, 8%. I, as an investor, won't touch a loan. I won't sub to it. So really at the end of the day, that's a little bit more beyond than what we're looking for, but the loan has to make sense. You know, taking over someone else's loan, we're buying the piece of paper. The paper that we're buying, that loan that we're taking over, is something that it needs to make sense to profit. As an investor, hey, am I going to cash flow as a rental? Do I turn it into an Airbnb? The piece of paper needs to make sense. But again, you want to ask those questions about HOA, solar panels, and water softeners, typical what we've seen.
That's great advice, guys, because those solar panels, Chris and I were talking about, those solar panels will eat you alive, man. They've gotten expensive. I saw somebody the other day spend $80,000 on solar panels. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
They're super expensive, guys. And so like the family I'm helping right now is listed with an agent, and the family found me. And the situation is 1 year in the house, brand new construction, no problem with the house. If they find someone to take over the loan of the solar panels, acquire it, they should walk away with $5,000, the sellers. But right now, every offer that they've received is for the sellers to pay off the house. Now they're upside down $30,000. They're being asked to pay off the loan, the solar panel loan, which doesn't make sense for them. So that's why they're in the situation, military family, going to be moving here at the end of the month. So sub two is like kind of the only option they have at this point, because they don't want to be landlords. And a lot of the times, military families don't want to be a landlord. It doesn't matter if they're moving to North Carolina, Florida, or Germany. Like, they just don't want to deal with the headache of being a landlord from so far. So, Collin, I don't know who you use, but I attached my attorney. Usually my attorney is the one that does everything. I attached it in the chat log, guys. Ruben Moreno has been my attorney for a long time. He's the one that does all my paperwork. And then right below that, I actually gave the reasons for the sub twos. A lot of us as realtors, as investors, we come across these situations. What's the reason for a sub two? Why will someone sell the house with sub two? So I gave you the list, which is pre-foreclosure, divorce, job loss, no equity, job relocation, or one of the big ones right now is selling in a neighborhood where they're competing with the builder and all their incentives. And what I mean by that is the family that I'm buying, the military family, is also being it's a Lucky Ranch. Lucky Ranch is actually starting construction again. So builders are paying closing costs, down payment assistance. The wife can go in and pick white cabinetry versus what's in the house at chocolate color. So why would a family want to go to your listing in a brand new construction neighborhood when I can go down the street and I can get, you've never lived there, no one's ever lived there, brand new carpet, brand new roof, brand new foundation.
And I can pick the colors, and I can.
Exactly. And so,
for the same price or less.
They get assistance, yeah. And the family that I'm helping, they don't even have an option to drop the price. Because why? They can't make no money. So that's one of the biggest reasons that we see this stuff. But like Collin mentioned in the beginning, if you don't mind, it's a very, very good tool as an agent, as an investor. An agent, at least knowing an investor that knows what they're doing. The reason why I say that is because you can help a lot of families, but you can also hurt a lot of families. The reason why I say that is You acquire property, you turn it into a rental. You acquire property and owner financing. You acquire property and do Airbnb. But you yourself need to be financially stable to handle it in case the cash flow doesn't come in month after month after month. So you need to ask yourself this question, because I really believe in the good, the bad, the ugly. The ugly side is you put a renter in there, they make 1 month's payment, and then they stop paying you for the next 3 months. Can you financially afford 90 days of payments, start the foreclosure process? And let's say you have your
eviction.
Mortgage. Yeah, you're right. Eviction. You have your mortgage, you have your sub two, and somewhere in those 90 days, you bought another one and you're still doing work on it. Can you afford this? Because there is no hard money, there is no private money that will lend you on these type of deals. Are you financially able to manage these things? So,
and he's 100% correct. And speaking of hurting families, so getting yourself financially, it's like, hey, because guys, I can tell you right now, some evictions take up to 6 months. I'd make sure I have at least 6 months of that mortgage payment sitting somewhere, just for the oh shit fund, right? But the other thing that can hurt people, guys, is you got to think, this is why you want their mailing address, their phone number. You need everything you can get about these guys. Because let's say you turn it into a rental and it's been working out great for 4 or 5 years, right? Everything's perfect, right? You got the greatest renter in the world. Everything's good. And you're just making your cash flow and you're getting your pay down on the house that you own. Well, 5 years down the road, our military veteran is back. And he's got a new wife and a baby, and he wants to go buy a house. The minute he goes to go buy a house, that mortgage is going to show up. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple of ways to handle it. So with a VA, guys, for those of y'all that don't remember, you have a VA allotment. I think it's $400 and something thousand. You can buy up to a 400, whatever it is nowadays, house under a VA loan. But if he spent it on a $300,000 house and he comes back and tries to buy another $300,000 house, they won't let him. He doesn't have that much money in his allotment. The other thing, if he goes FHA or whatever conventional, they're going to come back and they go, wait, your debt to income is jacked because we see you own this other house. Now you can help them by providing the lease and going, hey, look, this is my property manager. They got it all taken care of. It's done, right? That's one way to help them, but you have to be able to communicate with them and they have to be able to communicate with you, because that stuff doesn't happen in a month. That stuff happens in 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, a year or two down the road. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen at some point where you've forgotten about it.
And I do want to stress that people forget the suffering they were going through today at the time of you acquiring a property, foreclosure, divorce, upside down.
And they love you. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're really helping me out. 5 years later, look here, you son of a, you got my, like, it changes drastically, right?
When they want to buy a house, oh yeah, and they can't because of debt to income ratio. They're
because of Chris Negron, the devil.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I bailed your butt out
5
years ago.
You bailed them out 5 years ago, and now so it's actually having great constant communication and learning this. So before joining White Line, I used to do a lot of classes with agents and just say, hey, look, I'm an investor that acquires properties this way. I have proof of who I'm using. My realtors that I've worked with used to show up. I've helped their clients in the past. My attorney, who like I said, Ruben Morano, has done great for me. I went through a couple of them early on, trying to figure out which is the best suit for me. I highly recommend Ruben. I actually spoke to him today, and he's one that gets the job done. And sometimes, and I stress this a lot, because sometimes that foreclosure, a lot of people will wait till the last minute to admit to, I've let this house gone too long. I'm going to auction next Tuesday and today's Thursday. So how do I get out of this? And they don't have a lot of options. So having an attorney on your side that actually can get the job done, because I've met some of them, and the reason why I'm no longer working with them, it takes them 3 weeks to close a deal. You want someone that can actually turn around and get some of these things done right away. Now, not all of them. Some of them are just, hey, I'm moving at the end of the month and I've been listed for 60 days. I don't know what to do next. Those are the nice ones. We have time. But the ones that says, I owe $35,000 to the bank and I need to make something happen here by next Tuesday, and only giving you a Thursday notice, those are the ones that you need an attorney on your side that can move as fast as you. Now, with that being said, you pay for what you get for it. You definitely.
And that's exactly where I was going to go, because if y'all caught like the first thing I said, I was like, this is a creative financing with no money down. And then my next sentence was, call your lawyer. Guy, it's not, there's no such thing as a no money down deal. I'm sorry. Like, you're going to pay your lawyer a couple $100, maybe $1,000, $2,000 to file all this stuff.
So, you know, the thing I do want to also stress is sometimes families walk away with some cash. Sometimes the bank walks away with the cash, depending on the situation. You know, a lot of the times the pre-foreclosure is what I get pitched, and it's all about reinstating the loan, maybe putting about $1,500 in their pocket to help them with moving expenses. But if it's the other way around, that, hey, I'm VA, I'm current on everything, I just need to get out, I do not want to be a landlord, we put money in their pockets, absolutely. You know, and especially like someone like anyone that's here or anyone that's listening to this after, you know, the recording, we want to put money in the agent's pocket as best as possible too. You know, depending on the situations, you guys come and tell me, it says, hey, look, this family is $5,000 in missed payments. And then the next agent brings me, this family is $55,000 in missed payments. I can't pay the agent the same commission. It just doesn't financially make sense. Each deal is an individual deal. So you just got to look at it that way. So, like I said,
yeah, and then, go ahead. Well, I wanted you to share, like, because I know the biggest scary part is like, what if they call the loan due?
So, you know, Collin made a point, like it is 99% of the time you won't get a note due. So early on, I like to pitch to that homeowner, that the original borrower, please don't create any red flags. And what I mean by that is, don't go calling the bank and says, hey, so-and-so is taking over. They're going to be paying you. Don't go creating red flags. Give me a call if you have any questions directly. Because if there's a red flag created, the bank has the right to call it due in full. Now, you are taking the risk, okay? Is there ways around it? Absolutely.
What's the number one way to mitigate risk in real estate?
Attorney?
Insurance, man. Insurance.
Yeah. You know,
and weren't you telling me about an insurance?
Yeah. As an insurance for taking over someone's?
You know, for the acceleration.
Yeah.
Wasn't that you that told me about that?
Well, this is the thing. You also got to make sure that you have the right coverage, because just taking over someone's mortgage doesn't mean that you have coverage on it. You specifically, Collin, doesn't necessarily have. You got to be added to the existing loan, the insurance coverage. You know, you need to be able to call them as well. And so, a lot of us are going to be faced. You know, we don't know what the market looks like. I've heard today being Wednesday, the 10th, that we're supposed to be hearing something new in the lending side. I don't know what that looks like. I'm probably going to get on the phone here later with one of my lenders, but there's some changes that were supposed to be made. Now, what does that mean? So 2 years ago, we were seeing a lot of VAs getting 2-3%. I'm an investor that loves taking over stuff at 2-3%. We'll love it. But anything that's been a process in the last year, we're looking at 5, 6, 7% loans out there. I might not be the one who wants to touch it. So this option is good, but it's not for everyone. You as an agent might be able to pitch it to someone, but they might not go for it. And that's usually a lot of the times. I pitch 10 people and I get one yes. I pitch, let's say I went the next 30 days pitching them. I'm not going to hear yes from everyone. They're going to have family in their ear, the wife in the ear, that says, no, this isn't the best decision for them. But at least they're educated. I think as agents, as an investors, we should educate our clients the best we can. And what are their options? Because, Collin, have you been in the situation before you knew sub-twos that, hey, my client is going to lose money on the sale of the home?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It happens. It happens often. We're in the position by learning sub-twos and doing sub-twos that we can help families build their credit. So if we get someone out of foreclosure, we're actually, and in 2 years, 3 years, they're trying to buy. The reason why they're able to buy in 2 or 3 years is exactly because of us. We spent $25,000, got them reinstated. It's been a consistent payment for the last 2 years. And now they're in the position and now they want to buy again because we did it. We helped them. We reinstated the loan. We're consistently making the payments on time before any late payments are ever due. Now they're calling us back that they want to buy. That DTI is a bad thing, but at the same time, we also help them get back into that position to buy again. So instead of, because I've actually met families out of town that says, I actually been out of the house for 4 months. I haven't paid on it. I walked away from it. We're just trying to help them. They've already moved on to somewhere else with a rental in another state, in another city, moved on to their next job or whatever it is. They actually don't care if it goes to foreclosure. We're just trying to help them get out of that. The foreclosure is going to stay on their credit. What is it, 7 years?
Seven. I think it's 7 years.
I
Yeah.
believe it's 7 years. So we're just trying to give them an option to get everything back on track. We obviously acquire an investment property of some sort, whatever that may look. I know a lot of investors that will love the older homes. It's a 15-year loan, sub 2. I'm the one that likes something that's brand new, 2-3-year-old construction that I don't got to throw a lot of money at, but there's no equity. But if the numbers make sense and the neighborhood makes sense that I can at least cash flow $400, it's a great option for them and for me.
Yeah, and typically, like, I've only done it twice, and what I do is any of the cash flow I get, I actually put towards the loan. Like, I just pay it because, guys, I'm trying to get as much equity in that house as fast as I possibly can. Then there's a couple of reasons why. You have to have an exit strategy in your head.
Yes.
You have to have an exit strategy in your head. It sounds great. Oh, I'm going to take over this loan. I didn't have to qualify. It's not on my credit. Everything's good. And I'm just going to pay it off for the next 30 years. I haven't been doing this for 30 years. So I'm just terrified that at some point they're going to raise a shitstorm because they want that off their credit. They want to go buy a new house. They want their VA allotment back. They want something. Now, granted, guys, right now there's a ton of creative loan products coming out, such as DSCR loan products, the 1% down, the guy that was on a couple of weeks ago that was talking about the low to moderate income areas. There's a lot of exit strategies for them, and you need to have one of them in mind because the minute that, if you should get that letter or you get that phone call, you're going to have to move quick. And the more equity you have in that house, the easier it's going to be for you to qualify for a new loan of some sort, especially something like a DSCR loan. So that's my strategy is like I do everything I can to get as much equity in that house as fast as I can. So, and Chris, did you have anything else? Because I want to tell a scary story. We've got about 15, 20 minutes left, and I want to make sure I've got time for people to ask questions.
No, like I said, I do want to make a note that I'm here to help anyone that has a client that's in a situation like this. You know, I am a buyer, but at the end of the day, it is a piece of paper. So talking to your clients and asking them, hey, look, you know, for this to work, they do need to see a copy of your mortgage statement. I would like to see the most recent one. I got pitched one yesterday, and the mortgage statement they're showing me is 2016 mortgage statement. Doesn't make sense to me because a lot has changed since then. Having an attorney, I try to do everything. Having like CYA, you know what I'm saying? Don't do any of this paperwork. I've met investors that are doing stuff at their home office or whatever their rental space is, that their office is, that they're doing the paperwork, closing themselves. I don't feel protected that way. And I don't think your clients are going to feel protected that way. You know, as if you're actively an agent or you have a second job, you're an investor, you just want someone else to look over your work, then that's my biggest fear is that that's the one deal that's going to bite me in the butt. And I misspelled something. I keyed it in wrong. I did something. And so that's the reason why I have my attorneys to do everything for me. And whatever I do next, obviously I have partnerships as well. Owner finance, Airbnbs, rentals.
But don't they sell a sub 2 insurance?
I believe me and you spoke about it, but I don't think we've actually got that answer yet. We'll definitely have to look into it.
Yeah, I got to look into it. I feel like somebody told me that. Maybe I'm making that up.
I think you're the one that told me about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so guys, real quick, another thing just to kind of piggyback on what Chris just said, you want a lawyer that has done this before. Okay, they're going to help you make sure that, like I said, with all the law changes and stuff, they're going to be helping you CYA. So again, guys, first question:
real estate attorney. I hate to
real estate attorney.
A real estate attorney that's done this. You know, I don't.
Not my cousin who's an attorney because he does oil contract. No, real estate attorney. So real quick, my scary story, guys, and this is a horrible story. Some of y'all may have heard it before. But I had a lady reach out to me off of one of my mailers. She was going into foreclosure. She was losing her house on Tuesday, like to Chris's point. She was about 15 grand behind. Comes to me. I'm like, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. She happened to run a daycare out of that property. Okay. So with the purchase of the property, since I took over it, I made sure she was bonded and insured and had the state of Texas and all that stuff. Because guys, again, this is your property. All right. So you got to make sure everything's in there. And I didn't think anything of it. Well, the lady, I don't know, a couple months went by. She was paying her rent. Everything was copacetic. And then about 4 months into it, she just disappeared. Stop paying rent. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. And I mean, I was mad. She wouldn't answer my phone calls. And I'll never forget, I sat down, I printed out the vacate or quit letter because I was going to go put it on her door and all that stuff. And I said it, there's this one spot in my counter that I put stuff so I grab it on the way out the door. And my wife came in and threw the mail on it. And we had a letter from a lawyer. And I picked it up and it was a demand letter from a lawyer. I'm like, what in the hell is this? It turns out that she had a 9-month-old baby die in her care inside of my house. If that doesn't send chills up your spine, not only as a parent, like my heart broke, but then again, as an investor, like what's going on here? Ladies and gentlemen, having that lawyer behind me, having the social security numbers, copies of IDs, having checked and verified and had copies of all her bonding and insurance and all that kind of stuff really saved my butt. Okay. So once again, you've got to speak to a lawyer about this stuff because weird things happen. Now, for those of y'all that wonder how that I got out of this property, she didn't have a ton of equity in it. And I barely had enough money to make these payments. So nobody knew what was going on. And then I ended up rehabbing the property and just turning around and flipping it. And I think I made like $2,000. It was this stressful event for like next to no money that ran out for like 6-8 months. It's a pretty difficult thing. So again, guys, weird things happen in real estate. That's why you want to make sure your legal counsel's on there. Questions, comments, concerns, guys. What questions do we have with sub 2? Should you do a sub 2? Who's ready to do one? Who have I scared sufficiently? Anybody? It's kind of scary, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to do a sub 2. I saw that on Bigger Pockets. I heard it on a podcast. It's like,
yeah, no,
careful.
I do want to stress the good, the bad, the ugly, because it all sounds good in the beginning, but if you cannot do it yourself, it can put your family and your reputation and your finances in risk, and
that other family, you could just completely crap. You know, I'm going to save them so he can move to Germany, but now he's getting foreclosed on, right? You got to be careful, guys.
And the VAs taking over a VA is not. They're more sticklers about it because if the VA does not want to see any of their veterans in foreclosure, so then you're going to have that family calling you, hounding you to fix that problem yesterday. Because once they're in bad graces with the VA, the lenders, they're in trouble. So
yeah,
just being aware of it. So constantly.
Oh, and I wanted to say something brilliant that Chris does. By the way, since we don't have any questions, I want to compliment Chris because I thought this was really creative when he told me he was first doing this. So Chris says he likes the new homes that are VA loans, and I like to sub 2 those. Okay. Chris is taking over houses from military personnel that do not have any equity in their house and cannot sell it. That's basically what Chris is. Well, it was for a while. I don't know if it still is, Chris, but yeah, I knew you did a lot of those. Mm-hmm. What I thought was brilliant about that is if you have a loan that's 6 months old and his mortgage payments, I don't know, make it up $3,000 a month, you're probably not going to get $3,500 a month in rent. Everybody tracking with me on that one? Like when you have a 100% loan, there's not a lot of room to make up the difference for rentals in that same area, right? But Chris got really creative. How can you make more money on a house than having a rental?
Airbnb.
You can have a short-term rental, right? I can charge people $200 a night to stay in this house. Where's the problem with that logic? When they move out, the house is probably empty, right? So now I got to go buy a couch. I got to buy an end table. I got to buy, right? All the crap to fill the house up to turn it into an Airbnb. I thought that was a really creative solution that Chris was able to pull off. And then he kind of found, I know you found a vein for a while. I know you picked up a lot of houses pulling that number.
You know, I don't want to get too much off topic if we have a little bit of time. I don't necessarily agree with the Airbnb model no more. I think San Antonio, even just every market is oversaturated. Every new investor I've met has gotten into a home. And a lot of them, my wife is actually runs a successful cleaning company, so she's the one that cleans our Airbnb. So she's my eyes and ears daily, and so she actually helps a lot of other Airbnbs, and a lot of them that just created and bought in the last year, getting a 6% interest rate loan. Their monthly PITI is $2,300. They're having a hard time because we're oversaturated now in the market with Airbnbs. They're not getting enough bookings to cover. So what's ended up happening is now they're trying to transition from short term to long term, but the market doesn't allow. The rent rates have not caught up to what the mortgage is at 6-7% rates. So like as an example, a little bit off topic, but an example is this friend of my wife's. She's actually has a $2,300 PITI. Thought Airbnb was the right thing, fully furnished currently downtown San Antonio. Mortgage $1,900. So she would constantly still be underwater for a while now. But we want to cut the losses as best as possible. Right now, she's paying the entire thing on months that she's not getting bookings. So it's just something to take in consideration, guys. That's something for another time, Airbnbs. But yeah, so a lot of my current Airbnbs that I bought, sub twos are now on the market currently with owner finance wraps, either that or for sale, traditional buyers. But because I've owned them long enough that I have enough equity to make a profit this time around.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, guys, it is a creative solution. It can be a very low money out of your pocket solution or no money out of your pocket solution. But it's fraught. It's a dangerous place to be, in my opinion. It's a very, very dangerous place to be. I wouldn't run out of here tomorrow going, I'm a sub two expert and this is what I do. Guys, this is the third sub two I've ever done. I've been doing this for about 8 years. It's a timing, it's a place, it's the right option. I have a very clear exit strategy. The whole plan's working out, right? So, and if the whole thing goes sideways, it would, like, just to let y'all know, if the plan that I'm doing with this guy with the hard money loan and all this stuff, if that goes sideways, my game plan is to go get a DSCR loan, which will probably cost me somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 out of my pocket to get the new loan, pay off the old one, and get a renter in there. The bad news is if I have to do that, it's a negative cash flow of about $120 a month based on market rents. So I'm going to have to pay, like, if this thing goes sideways and I can't sell it between now and October and make a profit, then I'm going to have to take it down and buy it, which is going to cost me $1,500 plus another $1,200 or $15,000 and then another $1,200 a year. And that's a risk that I'm willing to accept when it comes to this, guys. There's risk everywhere.
I was gonna say there's risk everywhere. It doesn't matter what you guys are doing. If you went to the bank today for a conventional loan for Airbnb reasons, like that was it. My end game is that was a risk in itself, and it's now the market's turning. You get into an investment property, you thought your numbers were I'm gonna profit 75K. Turns around, you don't. Oh, if I can actually, I'll give you a quick example. I actually just had a closing yesterday. We lost square footage. Collin and I spoke about this a week ago. Guys, my investor bought a 1955 home and the square footage was 1551. Well, there was no survey, so we had to send a survey out and get it done and everything. Traditional buyer came in and bought it with an FHA. Well, we lost 120 square foot at $165 a square foot was a nearly a $20,000 difference in what we can sell it for. My investor is only walking away with $12,000. That was it. That's what their profit after a year's project. $12,000, which could, and there was other complications, but yeah. Well, the reason why we lost square footage is, just so you guys are aware, is you actually had to walk through the back door and go into a second door to the laundry room. Well, in 1955, that was considered living space, I guess. 1955 standards was that's living space. Well, 2023's standards is no, that's storage. So it's not living space. We got all the checklist of how to make a living space, but it wasn't working in the long run. They were not gonna come up that $20,000 difference at the end of the day. So there's losses. There's any traditional flips that you're taking a risk.
Yeah. But I will say this, like, I know we probably scared the crap out of you, but the good side about it is if I'm running around picking up houses for let's say $1,500. I'm like, hey, here's some moving money, give it to me. And now I've got a mortgage at 2.2%. Like if my whole portfolio was sitting at 2.2%, oh dear God. Like I might be upside down on cash flow for a year or two, but come the third, fourth, fifth, through whatever, like that's going to be really, really beneficial, right? That's a really nice thing to do right now. It's a great way to look at investing right now to keep your interest rates low. But like I said, it's a risk to reward. Do you want that 2% interest rate? Well, you got to deal with all this crap, okay? Because you're not getting a 2% interest rate anywhere else. So I guess overall, the things I want you to take away from this is, one, get a lawyer. Number one, do not try to do this on your own. You will screw it up and you will ruin your life and a lot of other people's lives, right? Get a lawyer. Number two, do not lead with this. This is not incumbent of you being a subject to expert at any stretch. I'm pretty, Chris, you've done way more than I have. Do you feel like an expert in the topic? Or you kind of like...
I'm still learning every day, but I'm also looking for answers every day. I'm looking for answers to questions that I haven't even got asked yet. That's the thing. I educate myself constantly in this part of real estate.
Yeah, so I would not lead with this. Like I would not be the sub 2 guy. I'm going to go around and buy every house sub 2 because it's only going to... I wouldn't do that, guys. To me, it is a last ditch effort. Like I'm going to try and hold this deal together, or this is the only way I can get you out of it, where it makes sense for both of us. Yeah. I know a lot of people that buy houses because they're like, oh, I got a deal, but the numbers don't quite crank out. Like I have to put too much down. I have to put too much this. And sometimes a sub 2 is the right way. That's why I wanted to at least educate everybody on it. And if you find one and you've never done one, before you contact your lawyer, you need to talk to an investor to make sure the numbers make sense. Then, you know what I mean? Just if you've never done one, you got to check these numbers because it does get hairy because you're not playing with your credit anymore. You're playing with a stranger's credit. You're playing with a stranger's house. You're playing with strangers' emotions, stranger's family. You know, the lady that I bought the sub 2 from, she had 4 kids. You know, it's like, if I ruin her credit, then, you know what I mean? She was trying to ruin it on her own, but I told her I'd fix it. And I'm a man of my word. I'm going to do what I can to make sure you're in a better situation than when I found you.
A little nugget guys, also is a reinstatement. Let's call it $20,000. And let's say you had the $20,000 reinstatement, and then you had a mortgage statement that says $250 left on loan. That $20,000 that an investor is going to pay does not necessarily mean that $20,000 is being applied to principal. Those are just missed payments, and
mostly lawyer fees.
It's
You're
lawyer
just flushing
fees,
a lot of that out of the
taxes,
toilet.
insurance that should have been accumulated, and this much went to principal every month. So there's times I might pay $20,000 and only $5,000. I'm lucky if $5,000 comes off the principal balance of left of what's owed. So it's just things to take in consideration if you guys are in that situation and trying to run numbers for yourself.
All right, guys, seriously, nobody's got any questions? That's a complex topic with a lot of weirdness.
Yeah. Collin, I think you did a really good job, though. I don't appreciate the feedback you gave me.
I think you did a good job. You taught me all, like the first one after I met you, that's why I drove you crazy about it for so long. I'm like, wait a minute, what about the... Yeah, you know, you taught me a lot of it. So that's why that's why I wanted Chris here. I was like, I'm going to talk for a minute. I want you to tell me where I screwed up, Chris.
Guys, I'm gonna put my number as well in the chat log. If you guys do not have it or have not met me in person, please call me. Love to hear about a deal you guys have that I can either help with or help you guys with.
Thank you, guys. Y'all both did good. And I guess no questions from me because I don't know what I don't know. So.
And you know what?
If you see one, if you think it's going to work, call us.
You don't know what you don't know, and that's early on in my career, I just wanted to learn this. And so that's the reason why I deep dive. I actually went 2 years without my license, and I got into the investment only. That was it. Like, that's all I want to do was investments. And then when I got comfortable enough, as a brokerage, a lot of brokers will not, KW will not touch you, EXP will not touch you if you're an investor that does this. The legality, the risk, but coming to White Line, I found Collin and Eric. I told them what I do. I told them my processes. And as long as you're taking care of yourself, I had a successful business and White Line agreed to let me join. So I got relisted as an agent.
But ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we were okay with Chris doing this, if you're doing one, you need to talk to me or Eric. Okay. We need to make sure you're doing it right because like I said, it's fraught. Okay. It's not illegal. It's not, I mean, if you're doing it for the right reasons, I'm okay with backing your play on this. But Chris has always been extremely transparent with us. If I want to see his numbers, if I want to see the books, if I want to see the mortgage statement, if I want to see something, Chris gives it to me. Guys, this is one you cannot do by yourself, not especially if you're green. You're going to need some help with it. So make sure you ask before you do, 100%, because if we get a phone call that you're doing this and we don't know about it, that's a doozy.
Bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
Bad.
Good word. That was the word. That was the word I was looking for. All right, guys. You all have a great day. Go get something to eat. Sorry, what's up?
No. I said now you guys know how to help that client that's in that situation next time, guys. So anyone that's listening
if you think of any questions, we're trying to do our next meetup, mixer, whatever. I'm trying to throw those two words together. We're trying to get that one in at Evo so we can bring our kids and I can let my children know y'all for the day. But yeah, we're trying to do that, guys. If you think about it, again, reach out to us, save them, write them down, come to our mixers. If you're not there, you need to be there. They're just a lot of fun. Sit around, drink some beer, get to know each other, and we have conversations just like this. So this is how we learn. We learn in the hallways, guys. So come hang out with us.
Yeah. Going back to the sub-twos, one thing I did buy Allison Tipton's. She has a little course on it. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but I did buy that. I don't know. Have you guys looked at that, or have you, Chris? Have you looked at
School
hers?
Hard Knocks for me.
Yeah.
I have to agree. The School of Hard Knocks. Allison Tipton is a great individual, and not talking. Don't take this as an ill sense. Allison's the one that takes about 3 weeks to close any kind of deal. That's kind of one of the reasons. But educated.
No, well, I haven't used her. I just got her course.
No,
so,
and that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very educated, very knowledgeable, very sincere, great with clients. Like, I do want to speak her up. If you have the time to go through a closing with her, great. But she knows what she's doing. But if you have a call today and you have to make something happen by next week,
it'll be hard.
Yeah, it's a little hard to get that closing successful. So, but yeah, she's a great person.
Well, thank you, guys.
All right, Collin, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chris. As usual, you're awesome. I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you so much for being here, and go kill it. Go find something to buy. Go find something to sell. That's what we got to do.
All right, guys.
All right, bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.